Okay. Welcome to our slightly unusual City Council meeting for tonight, March 18th, 2020. As has been recommended to do some social distancing, the council is spread, staff is spread, and we're still trying to continue on with our business. We will begin with our invocation by Pastor Sharp from Trinity Lutheran Church, and then the pledge led by Councilman Phillips.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be here tonight. In St. Paul's letter to the church at Rome, he wrote, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment." Heavenly Father, you have preserved your words for us. Give us ears to hear the wisdom of your word for our time. May those of us chosen for leadership always pursue and preserve your high standards for our city. In these tumultuous days, direct us to behave in such ways that the most vulnerable among us, the very young and the very old, would be kept in good health and saved from this virus. Bless us all with good health and help us to be attuned to our families and neighbors that need extra care at this time. Cleanse us from all unrighteousness and keep us on the way of faith. Keep in faith all here today who hold your Son, Jesus Christ, as their rock and author of their salvation. Attend to each who take part in tonight's meeting. Cleanse their hearts and fill them with love and concern for all of the citizens of Cedar City. Keep the leaders of this city free of self-interest and avarice, which would separate them from your Son. Jesus reminds us, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. May all who participate in today's meeting, the council, the staff, and the citizens, acknowledge your wisdom, and may every act of this body be undertaken to your glory and the strengthening of your reign here in Cedar City. Bless all here today with wisdom and grace, and bless our city, that it endure in order, good health, and prosperity under your loving care. In Jesus' strong name we pray. Amen.
Please stand and join me in the
Thank
Pledge
you so
Allegiance
much.
to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now move on to our agenda order approval. Are there any items the council would like changed from the published agenda? And as a side note, before we get to that, for anyone that would be watching this broadcast, there is a comment section. It will be, you do leave a comment that is done real time. And if you do, please type your name so we would have it for the record. But that can be another way that the public can participate with the real-time comment section on the YouTube live stream of our council meetings.
Is somebody monitoring that then? Or?
Tyler. So, yes. Okay, so now we'll move on to our agenda order approval. Are there any items the council would like change from the published agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll go to council business. Yes.
Mayor, I have two comments. The first, little levity. I arrived at my seat and found this roll of toilet paper Mr. Tom Jett fessed up to the crime and said he left it there as a joke because of my comments last week about washing your hands twice as long if you've run out. I appreciate his $500 donation. That's about the market rate of a roll these days. And so anyway, thank you for that. Another item that's a little more serious in light of some of these restrictions and likely increasing restrictions on activity and commerce, which I recognize and understand and appreciate the need to protect those most vulnerable in our community from this virus. We also need to recognize that many of these same measures that will protect those over 60 are also putting working families at greater risk of unemployment, economic hardship, and the accompanying social issues of domestic violence, drug abuse, and suicide. And I think if we recognize that and keep that in mind as we move forward in our responses, I do appreciate our Chamber of Commerce has launched a Facebook group today. For those who are interested, it's called Cedar City WorkMo, standing for Workforce Mobility, or Mobilization rather, sorry. And it is meant to be an online support group for those whose jobs have been affected by the social distancing measures and by the shutdowns ordered by the governor, so that they can have more resources to find work or to start a business or hone marketable skills. So I would encourage those who have had their business or their livelihood somehow affected to reach out in that capacity and find ways to either lift others up through the mentorship program that's on there, or to participate and receive some help through that. So once again, that's just a Facebook group. It's in there as Cedar City WorkMo, and the Chamber of Commerce has done that. So I appreciate their efforts on that.
Thank you. All right. Are there other?
I have a couple of comments, Mayor. I wanted to thank publicly Chief Adams and his staff and the fire chief for responding to my discussion last week about the Value Inn. They've responded and they've gone to that property and done some additional boarding up. They've contacted the property owners, and I know they're in the process of speaking with them about cleaning up the property, and we'll see how it all goes. But I wanted to thank them for their quick response to that from last week. And I also wanted to just, for my own self, I wanted to extend our heartfelt concern for our neighbors to the north with the earthquake that they suffered today in the Salt Lake City area and Magna, knowing that we're in this together as cities and municipalities across the state. And I know they're facing a lot of challenges on top of all the challenges that Councilman Melling discussed. So I just want us to have them in our thoughts and prayers as they're trying to deal with everything they're dealing with. And then finally, just to say, this is different for us to be in this social distancing arena and look out on some of our fellow council members out there. But I wanted to thank the mayor and staff for their great work in trying to keep our community and citizens updated, because as you all know, this is changing hourly and momentarily. And I think we've tried to be calm and cautious in our responses and trying to be fair at the same time, but it is going to have an enormous impact on the rural areas. So thank you, Mayor, for your comments and your constant posts of updating our cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other? Speaking of it changing, it's really changing more like second by second. We had and this is to give council, hopefully the community, we've been in budget meetings all day long, except for during the lunch hour, which we were in literally a task force meeting related to this, then back to budget meetings, then to here. So I haven't had time to type out or post or get any of the updates on social media, which will happen. But here's kind of a few updates for the council, for our community. I know some questions have been asked about if there are tests available in this area. I know people are really concerned and worried. There are tests, but there is a procedure to get to that. The first step is to call either a healthcare provider, the Connect Care telehealth system, or the health department has a new phone number. They will do the initial discussions with the individuals. They can provide next steps if individuals meet whatever their certain health criteria is. Then they will recommend testing or the different things, but that's the first step. So there are tests, because we've heard rumors that there are not. You've seen everything else under the sun. There are tests, but there is a process that's laid out by medical providers and all of by that. And there's a new testing facility, if you've been over by the Instacare, that's been set up for that. But call your healthcare provider first. Don't show up at the office. We've heard that many times. Call first. The Southwest Health Department has they are pretty much the agency that's over this area. They have the most up-to-date information. If you go to their website, swuhealth.org, or their Facebook page, that is where you can find their information. There are no cases in Iron County. There is, and it has been reported for a while, one in the 5-county region. It is the gentleman that was on the cruise ship that we've all seen on social media and on the news and everything else out of St. George for ages. So I have seen there have been some concerns over the fact that there's one case reported in the region. That is what the situation is. It's that gentleman. There are another side note to all of this is the hospitals, medical places are still seeing lots and lots of cases of the flu, even more than that of the coronavirus right now. So please keep all of your normal health precautions for this time of year of if you're sick, stay home, wash your hands, all of that, because the flu season is not over. We just now have this on top of it. The hospital has instituted a new rule that no one under 18 is, unless they themselves are seeking treatment, they're allowed in the facility. This is one especially for, there have been parents that, one parent has showed up with their kids to get lab work done. Well, they're being kind of turned away because the children aren't allowed in the hospital. So that's another one for the community to know. I mean, none of these are things that are city's instituting, but these are things that are impacting our residents. And so, the more accurate, correct information we can get out there, they've also limited visitors due to health precautions. I've had people kind of angry over, and I'm sure everyone has heard this, over the governor's declaration related to restaurant establishments and who's enforcing it, and that can't be done, and everything else. The governor and their authorities under the emergency fact that we are under a declared state of emergency right now. The public health departments are the ones that it's under their jurisdiction as well as far as enforcement. They are hoping that they don't need to involve law enforcement and others to actually enforce that, and that the communities will abide by those restrictions. I know when they went to pick up the lunch order today, the restaurant had just pushed tables and chairs out of the thing so you could still walk in and get your takeout order to go. So if you are in a position where you can still support our local restaurants, our local businesses. I know they are going to be hurting and will greatly appreciate the takeout business. For me, it's a great excuse to claim that I don't need to cook.
So Mayor, do I understand that then the health department will be the monitors of this, but if there's any kind of an issue that our local law enforcement may be asked to intervene?
If it gets to that point, the health department would contact and work with the law enforcement or the attorney, the county attorney, or all of them. But this is under the health department's jurisdiction.
Thank you.
That was one of the questions I asked, was about the enforcement of that, and then kind of the 10-person rule. It was interesting because our task force meeting had probably 20 people at it today discussing this. But they are just recommending to keep social distancing, practice the good hygiene, all of that, as things continue to advance. For our public facilities, the aquatic center, the library, festival theater, that have
The arena.
the arena had some events that were canceled, but the ones where we have shut them down, the staff, and another concern is that employees, to keep our employees working with those, we have, and it was really quite rewarding to see our staff come to us and say, during this time, if we're closing down, can we do maintenance? Can we fix up our facility so when we reopen, it's a better experience for the public? Can we clean? Can we do all these things that need to be done? So it's not, we have phenomenal staff. It wasn't, we just want to sit around or take time off. It was, how can we make our facilities better for the community once this is over and we reopen? So the staff, even part-time staff, the aquatic center, they're bringing back some of the lifeguards that are in town that want work hours to do maintenance lists and all of that, to try to, when the facilities are reopened, have the best possible experience for our community and residents. I will continue to keep you posted. This is, like I said, it's changing every few minutes, but hopefully that provides you a little more information as to where we are as a city right now and how things are going. All right, we'll move to staff comments. Are there any? No? Okay, then we'll move to the public agenda with a public comment portion. If there's anyone that would like to address the council. No?
Just ask one quick. Tom Jett, I won't even get close to it.
Hey, thanks.
Do you know if I have a lot of tenants that are low income, so a lot of them don't have insurance. Do you know if I'm told on the news the testing is free, but do you have to go see a doctor and pay for them to get the testing that is free? Do you have any idea how that works?
I
Okay.
would have them call the provider, call telehealth,
Okay.
or call their own insurance. When it gets to the medical side, or call the Southwest Public Health, call one of those and just ask them. I don't want to give any inaccurate information.
I didn't
And
know if
so-
you knew offhand.
No, just have them call one of those different individuals and they'll be able to help guide and steer people in the right direction.
All right, thank you.
And Madam Mayor, many of that contact information has been on your updates as well, correct?
Yes. And again, I will post we'll get that all. It's on the city website homepage. There is a link to the most up-to-date information that we're trying to put out as well. And we're trying to keep it up to date with different information and what is going on, and the Southwest Public Health as well. So, all right. Are there any other public comments? No? Okay, then we will move to our business agenda with our public portion. Item number 1, consider approving the final plat for Sage Springs Phase 3.
So I do not see Mr. Rosenberg here, the engineer on this project. This is Sage Springs Phase 3. This is located in the vicinity of 2150 on Northfield Road. They've come through and got vicinity plan approval. They've gone through all the requirements to meet final plat approval. All fines and fees have been, well, I shouldn't say fines, fees have been paid. Bond agreements have been signed. We are just waiting for the actual letter of credit from the bank. I received a letter from them last week saying, just because of some processing, that they'd have it to me by Friday. So we'll have it before the action meeting. If the council's inclined, I would ask that you put it on the action meeting
agenda.
just because we don't have that in hand.
I didn't see a plat map or anything. How large of a phase is this? Could you maybe send it out to us this week so we can just see how many units and,
Yep, I can do that.
okay, thank you.
Right. Are there any other comments, questions? This will go on the action agenda.
Just, is it, if it's along your same lines, I was just wondering if there've been any changes from phase 1 and phase 2, since we're now moving to phase 3 in terms of design or number of units or anything like that. But
Right. The design and everything is going to be very similar.
I would think so.
But yeah, I'll get you a scanned copy of the plat so you can see that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll move to the staff portion with item number 2, consideration for an adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance and sales of not to exceed $6,600,000 in federal taxable / convertible to tax exempt general obligation aquatic center refinancing bond series 2020.
I think you're up, Mr. Bittman.
Well, I'm going to be a poor substitute for Jonathan Ward from Science Public Finance.
Especially if you have no candy.
Chocolate.
Come
I
on,
didn't bring any
that's
chocolate.
why we're here.
Frankly, there are bribes
Well,
and
actually, I got to take that back.
Oh, you have to say your name, by the way.
Oh, Paul Bittman, city manager. In the conference room in the admin area, there is some chocolate-covered M&Ms.
Mm.
Rather large basket containing such.
That's not a
Or-
good substitute.
There are some Snickers bars. They have chocolate and peanuts.
There's
Okay.
peanut, I think there's peanut M&Ms.
There's peanut M&Ms. So
Okay.
not the same. So
You're
I
getting
can-
closer, but
yeah, not still
There's
not
a
hitting the mark.
chocolate
Huh?
bunny.
There's a chocolate bunny. No. This particular bond refunding issue does two things for us. This is the general obligation bond on the aquatic center. When we first did this bond, we did what was called a Build America bond under the Obama administration. And the promise from the federal government at that time was that they would subsidize that bond's interest rate. And it was part of the Let's Make America Work program, and let's get people back putting money into the economy after the recession. So we went with the Build America bond, and this might be a small exaggeration. Every year the government would say, this is what the subsidy is going to be, and it looks great. And then when the federal budget actually came out, it wasn't the same. So we've never realized the full value of the promised subsidy. It's always been at a reduced rate for the life of the bond. That's one thing. Two, we have an opportunity right now to refinance the bond, save some money on the bond. The Cedar City Corporation would not realize any of those savings. All of the savings on this bond would be passed on to your taxpayers in the form of a reduced future general obligation payment. So it's not going to save the city a nickel, but it is going to save the taxpayers some money to do this. And that is why we're suggesting.
It doesn't change the time frame on the payment of the bond or anything like that,
No,
right?
we're not shortening it. We're not lengthening it. We're just refinancing it to a lower rate.
So if
Getting
it's
rid of
a,
the subsidy.
if it's a revenue bond, though, was the Build America bond not a revenue bond? I don't understand how it translates to the general obligation on the tax roll.
This bond has always been a general obligation bond. It was the bond that was approved by the
Okay.
voters. The Build America was a subsidy, an add-on to the bond that was supposed to help us lower that bond payment.
Okay.
And the subsidies never really borne the fruit that it promised it would bear. So it actually saves our taxpayers more money to get rid of the subsidy
Okay.
and refinance it.
Interesting.
And what roughly is that rate change?
Tyler, do you remember after reading the, I don't know.
Okay.
Could we
That's why I
find,
was hoping Mr. Ward would be here from Zion's Public Finance.
Okay.
But they had a little earthquake this morning, so I'm sure
Right.
that probably threw.
could we make sure that that information is available
Sure.
next week before we
Yeah.
move on it?
You want the rates?
Mm-hmm.
And so I will provide you in writing the rates, not only on this bond, but the subsequent bonds and the anticipated savings.
Anticipated savings,
Yeah.
right?
Perfect.
What is the total amount going to be then? Because I thought I read in there somewhere that the sewer bond was 4 million, but then this says not to exceed 6.6. So I was kind of
So
confused.
this is not the sewer bond. 6.6 million is the general obligation bond on the aquatic center.
Okay. That's where I got confused.
And
Yeah.
then.
please
just
don't
the
be
aquatic.
confused by the language. We're not,
Okay.
it's
All right.
more designates the bond.
Okay.
I don't think we're,
Thank you.
Is
I'll
re-
also provide you the amount that's outstanding on that bond. We can get that, Jason, can't we? Pretty easily.
is refunding just a fancy term for refinancing?
That's what the bond guys say. It's a refunding.
Because
of
I
the
think it was
bond.
confusing to some of our citizens who saw the agenda.
Yeah. So they never use the refinancing term. The bond guys always use refunding. I myself, I don't know the technical difference between the two,
All
but
right.
I always equate the two. If I go and refinance my mortgage, it's similar to what we're doing with the bond.
I would encourage everyone to do that.
Jason Norris, Finance. Yeah. Obviously, these are a little strange, just the timing of all this. But months ago, Zion's reached out to us as the yield curves were changing.
Right.
And they said, hey, do you guys want to issue any debt? You want to refinance your debt? They looked at our whole portfolio. And we said, well, rates, in our opinion, look like they're still going to be kind of drifting down a little bit. We were also kind of talking about some other projects.
Mm-hmm.
So then they reached out to us.
That was probably August.
That was August. They reached out to us in December, said, okay, yeah, the rates did come down. Here are various bonds in your portfolio. We think we can refinance them into these lower rates. Specifically with that Build America bond for the Aquatic Center, we could get out of the federal subsidy. We just didn't really love that feature of that bond. So that one doesn't save us as much money through different rates. It's just we get out of that federal subsidy that has not been super duper reliable. And philosophically, we don't really like the structure of the subsidy. So the water bond is just totally separate. It's just going to be refinanced at a lower rate. Our other debt, either we don't have a lot of savings or we have some debt that's maturing. So if Zion's Public Finance were here, they'd be telling you that, yeah, they've evaluated our whole debt structure, which we don't have really that much debt, but that's kind of why we have more than one.
As we look at this, and since we haven't made any determination and won't for at least a week on this, how much fluidity is in this? Because the Federal Reserve has also lowered the rate. Is there a chance for any additional savings? Are we already locked into what they've quoted us? Or
So that question's probably better for Jonathan Moore
okay,
than for either of us.
Yeah, this issue we were working on a few weeks ago, and things have changed drastically. So
Right.
we don't know what all is happening with federal and national rates and packages issued by the government. We don't know any of that. This was something we've been working on for a while.
But real succinctly, we had this public hearing published 2-3 weeks ago to have the public hearing today.
Mhm.
So let's hold the public hearing. If you all have these types of questions and we
Mhm.
need to make contact with Zion's Public Finance to bring them back down when hopefully there's no earthquakes,
Mhm.
we can do that. If that gives you more comfort moving forward on the bonds, that's perfectly okay. But let's hold the public hearing, move that, get that portion moved on. And then if y'all want, we can continue this until we can get Zion's here either next week at the action meeting or in a subsequent meeting.
No, I was just asking because I'm fully in favor of trying to save some dollars and put them back in the citizens' pockets. But I was just checking to see if there was additional savings that we could
If we can get a better
recoup.
rate.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So
One question I have that you may have the answer to, or maybe Zion's, in the mortgage industry, there's usually closing costs and different fees, and that's their incentive for helping you refinance. What are those incentives at play here with Zion's? Or is there any kind of fee or something that's going to be assessed? If so, do we know how much that is for this process?
With this bond and every other bond, yes. The answer is yes. There's bonding fees. They go to Zion's Public Finance. They go to bond counsel, who has to draw up all the bonding documents. Typically, our bonding costs range from $25,000 to $35,000 on an issue such as this. They are financed into the refinancing, and our savings are calculated with that amount removed.
Perfect. Thank you. That
Yeah, that's
answers
the
my
ballpark
question.
we're in.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for Bittman? No? Then we'll open the public hearing on this item if there's anyone that would like to speak to it, or anyone on our YouTube that would like to comment. I don't know if anyone's typing anything. Okay. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, and this will be on the next agenda. All right, item number 3, consideration for an adoption of the parameter resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of stormwater revenue refund bond series 2020.
Okay, this is another bond that we want to refinance. We're going to achieve some savings on this one. This is a different bond. The stormwater bond is a bond that we pay out of our user rates. So every month, everybody gets a bill in the mail for water, storm drain, garbage. Is that it? I think so. Sewer. Sorry, sewer guys and sewer.
Glad you are here. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Eric. So part of that calculation when we set those rates was some funding that was available to go do some storm drain improvements. These bonds were taken out during the last recessionary period under Mayor Burgess. We did $3 or $4 million worth of storm drain improvements. And again, there's an opportunity to lower the rates on these bonds. We're not extending the payments. We're not extending the time. We're just lowering the rates to save a little bit of money. It will ease the costs on that storm drain fund.
And we don't have any upcoming projects for this, or is this just paying off the original project?
So this bond is, for lack of a better term, closed. We don't have room to go use that bond money anymore to do any more projects. The last project that it paid for was storm drain improvements coming down Cross Hollow Road. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just paying that bond off. Now, within those enterprise funds, the sewer, water, storm drain funds, there's projects every year that are funded by those revenues to improve our systems.
Thank you.
All right.
So, and I'll get you the same information on these bonds as far as bonding costs, exact bonding costs, savings, amounts and rates and such.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Then we will open our public hearing if there was anyone that would like to address the council, or anyone on our live feed. No? Okay, then we will close the public hearing on this and move this on to our action agenda. Item number 4, consideration for an adoption of parameter resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of a water revenue refunding bond series 2020.
Same, kind of the same story on the water revenue bonds. They were issued during the last recession. We went and replaced a bunch of older infrastructure, some undersized pipes. We did a couple $1 million worth of water system upgrades with that money. Again, we would be refinancing them, lowering our rates, not extending the time period.
And this is a closed bond as well.
Correct.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments from council? Okay, then we will open the public hearing on this item. Anyone typing? No? Okay, we will close the public hearing.
One question on all three of these bonds. If I call Science Public Finance and arrange for them to come, do y'all want to hear from them? They're way better than I am. And they bring chocolates. Do y'all want to hear from them? Do we want to schedule this so we
he's
can
able
bring
to
them?
come.
Okay.
I think we'd like to.
Okay,
Preferably if
Done
there's
deal.
not an earthquake that day.
I'll try to get them next week. If not, we might have to ask you to postpone it for a week or so. Thank you.
It's been
Thank
a crazy day in Utah with everything going on, so. All right, item number 5, consider an ordinance amending the available use of water outside city boundaries.
So a few weeks ago, as you recall, we had a citizen come to this council asking for permission to provide a water connection for the watering their livestock. The council voted not to allow that. That was within the council's prerogative. Since then, and the direction I was given at the time was to look at this ordinance. The general feeling I got was that this really isn't irrelevant to today. The purpose of this ordinance was to promote individuals to move their livestock from the city boundaries to provide them water, and that's really not an issue in our boundaries currently. So I went through the ordinance and that's been provided to the council, and I struck out various language that I didn't think was applicable anymore. So the first section deals with watering outside the city limits. It says we're going to continue to honor those water connections that we provide to residential and commercial customers. And then in the next section, I've changed that a bit to deal with the use restrictions for existing livestock watering outside the city limits. And if I remember right, Paul, was there five, six connections?
So we talked to Rob about that this afternoon. Robbie generated a list of all of the outside of the city connections
For livestock,
for anything,
or anything.
just whether they're on Horse Alley or Milts or whatever else we have.
Ellen's bathroom.
Yep, everything that we have.
Okay.
And he sent me a draft of that on Monday, and I saw it. And then when I chatted with him this afternoon, he was going to update it and add the rest of the connections on there. So I'll forward that to you as soon as I find it on my email. It's
So-
not very long.
Yeah. So we'll continue to honor those. But then that section 37-22, that just kind of continues to spell out some of the user's responsibilities. If they're going to change the line, they have to go through the water superintendent to get permission. They're in charge of paying for all the costs that dealing with updating connections and meters. They can't allow any unauthorized user to connect to it. They've got to fall in line with the Utah State Board of Health concerning the quality of the water. Any questions on that?
No,
No, thank you.
I think most of the council was in consensus on that issue, not on the issue at hand at the time, but the issue that is now at hand, which is that the ordinance is no longer relevant and has outlived its usefulness. So appreciate your work on that.
Right. Are there any other council comments? This will go on the action agenda where it's an ordinance. Item number 6, consider resolution amending the city's engineering standards.
Now, this is going to be exciting.
Randy Clove with Wastewater Collections. We're just going to change, we want to change our submersible lift stations. What we have is we've learned over the years that going out at 2 o'clock in the morning in a snowstorm and you're working with 480 power and we have Dorset Technologies runs our SCADA system. You go out there, you open a panel, snowing sideways, it ruins electronics. You can get flash arc from the power. So what we want to do is we want to add this building in to protect our panels and everything inside of there, that where they will last longer, because what we're finding out with these lift stations are lasting a lot longer, which they should be, like some of them we just took out of line not too long ago was put in the late 70s. So they're if we could put these enclosures over these panels, they'll last a lot longer. They'll, protect our employees for safety and just all around make it a lot better.
What kind of costs does that add to the developer?
We've looked into them, and these buildings anywhere go from about, the buildings are prefabbed, and the ones I looked at were anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 on that. The cost of that you can endure is like it either put in your gravity line or you put in a lift station, and that's some things. A lot of these you could look at the gravity side of it. It's worth it in the long run because the taxpayers are going to be paying for these, paying for this, and in the long run, the building will pay for itself within parts wise and maintaining it.
So would this just be for the lift stations?
Yes,
How many lift stations do we have in the city right now?
we have 5 right now.
Okay, so not many.
No.
Okay. How would cost allocation go with, someone puts in a lift station, but it ends up benefiting many other developments? Do we have any proposals for how to allocate those costs?
We have done kind of pioneering agreements in the past but we limit them. We don't make them, as far as timelines, unlimited. So you're developer A, you come in, you put in the whole lift station, you pay all the costs. We've entered agreements where we'll give them 10 years, and if developer B, C, D, and E connect on, they would pay a proportionate share of reimbursement back to developer A. Some of our development community don't find these very helpful, because then developers B, C, D, and E wait till year 10.7, and then they come in and develop and don't realize any of those costs.
Okay.
Yeah, but there has to be some kind of a limit. You just can't go in perpetuity.
Right.
You make them unlimited, frankly, stack.
Well, and on that, if there is development, a lot of times with these lift stations too, they have to be upsized. So it can't be too large of a upgrade, because they're obviously sized for the amount of customers that are on them too.
How big are these? How big are these panel units? I mean, these buildings.
These buildings, we're proposing as a 10 by 15 by 8 foot ceiling. So
Oh,
in the
good
panels,
size.
you have all your switch gear for your 480, your master power switch. You have your Doorset Technologies panel, which is about a 4x4 panel. And then you have your control panel for your pumps, which is another about a 4x4 panel. And they can get bigger depending on the size of the pumps.
Is it then the city's responsibility to maintain those once they're installed? I mean, the building itself. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be made of, but do we fix aluminum siding or paint it or reshingle or whatever it needs to be done?
Yes, we do. And we've what I did is I went out and looked at our well houses, and they have some of these precast buildings, and we kind of given them open, like they could put like the precast concrete or the metal. Most of what they want you to do is match the surroundings, and so
Yeah.
some of these places can go in if this lift station is going to be right in the middle of the housing. They can, for instance, our Cedar Meadows lift station, they went in and put stucco, and it's kind of like the surrounding houses around there, the color scheme and all that. So they try to keep it to where the public, it's not like an eyesore looking at.
We don't put our logo all over it? I'm just kidding.
Are there any other comments, questions
I
related?
know, I think safety is paramount, and I think it's very important that we protect the people that have to maintain it and fix them.
Yeah. So if we pass this standard, is there flexibility for determining how that's paid for in the future on a case by case basis? I just worry that I'm very sensitive to anything that's going to potentially increase the cost of housing, even if this is one that only adds $200-$300 per house. that adds up. And if we do enough things like that, you're adding thousands of dollars to the cost of a home. So if there's a way with the funding that we can, maybe we do it with the impact fees where instead of this 10-year thing, we're able to look at impact fees covering some of these costs, and then the developer that's putting it in gets an offset of those impact fees. Is that a possibility? Or
So the impact fees typically on sewer infrastructure go to upsize sewer infrastructure. I don't think we require these to be upsized. We require them, our specs would be set out so that it requires a certain type, volume, pumping capacity. So that these would typically not be eligible for impact fees.
okay, and then have we brought this issue before the Home Builders Association? Do they have other recommendations, or are they on board with this? What's their take on this issue?
I'm not aware that we brought it to project review, but there was no comment on it. A lot of these on the cost of these, they'll pay themselves off in time. I mean, the building with, like, say what I was saying with the panels in there and the electrical equipment and everything, that's
Right.
a small cost because the lift stations are very expensive.
Right, and for the taxpayer, I understand that this is a good policy. I'm just wondering for the new homeowner, is this also a good policy? Or are we shifting too much of the burden onto young families that are trying to get into their first home? So that's, anyway, I'd be curious to see what home builders have to say about it. But
They're not meeting this week, so
right.
could you, so I can wrap my head around this. So are we going to do the existing lift stations with this new building? Is that the idea? Because if that's the case, do we pay that bill because they're already in?
Oh.
This would be prospective. This would be a new lift station that comes along that this would apply to. Cedar City, if we've already accepted lift stations that don't have it,
Right.
we want to put it in, then that cost gets on us.
I understand.
All the taxpayers.
I just didn't know if that was going to be part of our proposal, or if this is just on new lift stations. Okay, thank you.
If Randy wants to propose one in his budget to put over an existing issue, then
I just don't want Randy to get kilowatted.
We've actually looked into that, and our existing lift stations that we have, a couple of them, the way they were laid out, we cannot put a building on them because they're too congested in there, and there's no room with the distances to put
Gotcha.
a building in there. And then we did change on the engineering standards, the design, the layout of, so when these buildings are put in, so when we pull our truck in, it'll be put in there to where you can pull the truck in to where we can access it without trying to reach around buildings and work around structures. We're wanting to put it in the engineering standards to where we can just pull in easily and have the wet well into the front, because we put cinders on our roads. We have flush stuff that shouldn't be flushed. And so we have them in our wet wells. We go in usually quarterly and we suck the wet wells out of all the debris that's in there, the grease, whatever in there. So we just want to make it another safety thing that we can pull our trucks in without damage our trucks and our employees not having to work in unsafe conditions if they have to work around structures.
Sure.
Other communities, excuse me, that are our size, is this typically how they handle it? Have the developers put in, or where do we compare to others around us that are doing this? Do you know?
Yes, almost all of them I've looked at and researched, they do have these enclosures. A lot of them, they have it doesn't solve a lot of the problem. They have fiberglass enclosures. We've had problems with the fiberglass enclosures that have come with them because the ground moves a little bit on them and it tweaks the enclosures. That's kind of why we got to wait. That's what a lot of the surrounding areas have used those. And that's why Kit on our other ones, which we have our above ground pumps now, have these cast buildings, and they've held up well. And that's what most of it, that we just went this direction with our submersibles because the pumps are underground and they're in a wet well, and they their panels are exposed outside. With our pumps that are above the surface, the panels are within the building and the pumps are all in one building.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, this will go on our action agenda. We do, we have to go back up to our bond conversation. We did have a public comment typed in that we need to address.
So just a quick question. Who oversees the bonds?
Who oversees the bonds?
Kelly Hoffley.
I'm not sure I understand the question. The bonds are all held by private entities or banks. They're owned by private entities, private individuals, or banks. We work through Zion's Public Finance at the current time to be our bond counsel and advisor. The city council has, as far as Cedar City Corporation, the city council has the vote on whether to bond or not to bond, or to refund bonds or not refund bonds. If that's the tone of the question, as far as overseas, for us, it's the city council. They can say bond or don't bond.
They're looking for the management of them.
Yeah.
Because isn't that
That
Zion's?
Zion's
That'd be
Public
Zion's,
Finance for
right?
us manages them and makes
That's what they
sure
do.
that
That's all
we
they
pay them, and
That's why we pay them. But in our budgetary processes, we oversee payment.
we oversee payment. Jason budgets money every
Jason's
year
doing
to
that, and so-
to make sure when we get the bonds issued, they issue a payment schedule and a coupon schedule and everything else. And we know from year to year, Zion's Public Finance communicates every year with Jason on all of our bonds. And
Well, I maybe this question also has to do, on the consumer end, if you're investing personally in stocks or bonds, that may be any individual that's brokering that, but that would all be through, as far as we're concerned, we don't have anything to do with that, nor does it affect our
no, that all goes
bond.
through Zion.
Right, exactly. So that Zion's would be assisting in that capacity, but we as a city wouldn't
You
be
asked me the question.
involved.
We have another
Yeah, so there's a follow-up question.
Okay.
So the original question from Ms. Hoffling is who oversees the bonds? She then asks, is there a bond committee to make sure the projects are staying on budget? So these projects are
Okay.
completed. So these bonds
Yeah,
have
these
already
are
been.
done.
So these bonds date back to, I believe, 2011 is when the water and storm drain projects were done, or were issued, excuse me. The projects were probably completed, all this infrastructure, by 2013. The Aquatic Center was constructed in 2008.
2000. We opened
2010, I guess. So the bond issued in 2008. The construction was complete in 2010. So we're not issuing any new debt for
No.
any new projects. All of these infrastructure projects or buildings were completed over 5 years ago. In terms of who manages the payment, we have these bonds are owned by different financial institutions. I know State Bank of Southern Utah owns some. We have several with the CI
Community Impact Board.
Community Impact Board within the state. Just trying to go off the top of my head. So those are in our budget every year, and we're sent invoices from each institution that owns those bonds, and we pay those debt service payments. So I don't know if we're answering the question, but these are not
But
new.
It's not new money, not
These are
new
not new
bonds.
money. This
I-
is simply
Projects
just
to manage.
I think part of
refinancing
it is the way
existing
it's
debt.
listed on the agenda. It's
It looks
kind
like
of
it's issuing
confusing
new.
because it looks like it's new money, but it's not new money. It's
No.
not new projects.
Last question is it the city council who makes sure things are going well?
Yes.
City council's always
Yes.
gets the
Generally.
credit when
Yes,
things
we
go
do.
well. So Ms. Hoffling just responds saying, okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
All right.
Yeah.
And thank you for participating in our different type of meeting. And with that, unless there are
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
all in favor,
Aye.
thank you. And thank you for the community, for our public, for their kind of patience.